the message that was delayed for 2 years, that their freedom had been stalemated, that their freedom had been delayed, but here it is, it cannot be denied. And oftentimes, when you think about what it is that we experience, the tyranny, the racism, the negativity, oftentimes Black people being the last hire and the first fire, where we have not necessarily experienced a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Those in many cases have been foreign words to us. Oftentimes we have experienced the threats of the negativity of what it has been in these yet to be United States of America. But oftentimes with the lack of voting rights, the last to be free in school, the last to experience this and that and the other, there is still something left that we must fight for, even in 2023. Texas, if you think about it, is the furthest region outside of the grasp of slavery, and so the people receiving the word of emancipation was an indication that the Civil War had really come to a conclusion. We've gone from Civil War to still fighting for civil rights. Civil rights are still one of the main key indicators, and not just civil rights, but now civil rights. As we think about economic empowerment, we think about economic inclusion, we think about, in many cases, our white brothers and sisters accrue an income that is 10 times more than the average Black household. There's a lot of things that still need to be taken place, that still need to be done, for there to be real diversity, for there to be real equity and inclusion in the land that we live in. Because Black people, we can say, listen, we love America. From Crispus Attucks, from us being the first soldier to die for this country, Black blood was shed as Black bodies built the United States. We love America. We just want to be treated as equal in America. And I think that's been the clarion cry from barbecue office, from being homes, from being tased, from us understanding that we don't live in the United States of amnesia, because it was 200 plus years ago that Black people did not have the opportunity, the right to read, the right to write. Right? We would be lit, we would be maimed, we would be killed, we would be lynched. Because the slaver understood that if I free your mind, the physical manacles of your chains have to come off. And isn't it interesting that we're still living in a day and age where the incarceration epidemic is at an all-time high? America houses 95% of the world's prison population. And so we see a connection between illiteracy and incarceration. Dr. Juwanzi Kajufu wrote the book, Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys, and they're building prisons based on second and third grade reading scores, locking up young brothers' dreams, but not unlocking the power of their mind. And so the real diversity, the real equity, and the real inclusion is to understand that none of us can be colorblind. No, y'all see I'm a Black man, right? Come on. Yeah, we can't be colorblind to the whole aspect, because being colorblind means I ignore your race. I ignore your background. I ignore your creed. I ignore your color. I ignore what it is that you have experienced. But it is the aspect that we can find a common thread, even though there are differences. Different doesn't mean we're deficient. Diversity is not adversity. It's got to become the true strength of what it is that we have experienced, wherever it is that we have come from. Our brothers and sisters in Galveston, Texas, received the message that was delayed, but as I said, their true freedom could not be denied. Because when you think about it, we have experienced so much freedom, but think about how far we still have to go. Because this is the backdrop of Juneteenth, that we're happy to march when it is that Black men are still yelling, Black men are still gasping, that Black men are still screaming and declaring under the bottom of a boot from a police officer, I can't breathe. When the oxygen supply of freedom, justice, and equality is still choked out of Black and brown bodies in America, there's still something left to fight for. Though you may not understand it, because you don't come from that particular background, because you don't come from that particular city, because your per pupil expenditure when you went to school far exceeded Detroit public school systems. You may not understand it, but we do have to embrace the reality of it, that we are all inextricably tied together, as Dr. King said, in one garment. What affects me affects you. What affects you affects me, whether directly or indirectly. And we have to step into the pain of each other. We have to sympathize. We have to empathize. That empathizing should cause us to mobilize, strategize, and organize together. Right? Because the quote suggested if we don't hang together, we're going to eventually hang separate. And we have to understand, whether it is from Emmett Till to Trayvon Martin to Eric Garner to Sandra Bland to George Floyd to Breonna Taylor in Louisville, that we still have something left to fight for. How much more do we have left to fight for? When African Americans make up just 13% of the country's population, but we account for 35% of those in American prisons. We have something left to fight for. When Black women are excluded from higher positions because they choose to wear braids, we still have something left to fight for. When freedom is still late getting to America, we still have a lot, and we still have a long way to go. Because we're still experiencing the systemic tide of what it is that we have experienced. Think about where you work. Think about your cubicle. Think about your organization. Think about the whole aspect of where it is. And that's why I think real-time media, that's why I think Michigan Chronicle is so needed and so necessary, that it's got to be supported like the Free Press. It's got to be supported like the Detroit News. It's got to be supported because we have to allow our voices to be heard. Because if you tell my story, it's journalism. But when I tell my own story, it's a testimony. We have to uplift the whole aspect that there is not just Black Pride as a hashtag, but we have to work for it. We have to engage with each other. We have to have critical, courageous conversations about race, about diversity, about equity, about inclusion, when it feels uncomfortable. Right? Because we can't get to the root of things. We can't really harness, we can't really remediate what we don't talk about. In just about 10 hours or so, Juneteenth is going to wrap up. Juneteenth is going to be over. After all the pomp and circumstance, after all the backyard parties, after everybody playing the eyes and brothers in the back, and eating ribs and chilling and popping whatever it is that they pop, right? And after all of the celebration, after all the pomp and circumstance, what we have to do, we're going to segue into June 20th. But what will we do when it comes to July 8th? What will we do when it comes to August 8th when the primaries come? Juneteenth, as I said, is more than a moment. It has to be a movement because this country is built on what we say, liberty, freedom, and justice for all. And if it is for all, it can't just be segmented for y'all. It's got to be in a place to where those who have privilege, those who understand that you are part of a great power structure, how do you reach back to help somebody else? If you think about it even in the faith aspect, we ask the question, am I my brother's keeper? And that's a rhetorical question because that should be a resounding yes. I have to be my brother's keeper. I have to be my sister's protector. My brother or my sister is not just who looks like me. It's the one who engages with me. It's the one who I see on a daily basis. It's the one who I see at the job. It's the one who I engage in critical conversation. And I don't just click up in my crew and in my circle simply because my race and my space feels comfortable to me. But I'm able to bridge the gap. I'm able to branch out. I'm able to engage in the fierce urgency of now. And sometimes that is being uncomfortable. We got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. We have to be uncomfortable being comfortable because we are living literally in the divided states of America. Red states, blue states, Republican, Democrat, those who seem to balance the two in the middle. Those who are fighting on the left, those who are fighting on the extreme right. And these types of critical conversations that we must have help to bridge the gap. Because we can see a lot clearer when we communicate in a greater way. How am I using my words? How am I thinking in a critical aspect? Because I've got to be a critical thinker in a chaotic world. I'm going to give you a few blueprints, tips, and tools of what it is that we can do and what we can experience. Julian Bond said, the former chairman of the NAACP, good things don't come to those who wait, Rather, they come to those who agitate. We have to agitate the system. We have to speak up for the least, the last, the lost, the left out, the overlooked, the underserved, and the underrepresented. We have to speak out for those who seemingly have their voices muted in a society where they're screaming and suffering in silence, but nobody seems to hear. Dr. King affirmed this. He said, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies. We will remember the silence of our friends. Here it is. Silence is the greatest violence because we fail to speak up for those whom we can go back for. And as I said before, we cannot say that we're colorblind at all because neither of us are, and the statement is rather unsettling. None of us are blind, none of us are surely colorblind, because as I said before, to be colorblind implies the invisibility of my race. And too often, Black lives have been overlooked, underserved, and underrepresented. If you think about your experience of your world is seen through your lens. Your experience of your world is seen through oftentimes the cultural cataracts that we wear. Your experience of your world has to be an anti-racist. You may say, well, I ain't racist, I vote for Obama. I ain't racist, I got Black friends. I ain't racist, I was at the backyard party just last week. I ain't racist, Dexter Sullivan is my home. I ain't racist, I be real-time media. Here's the question, are you anti-racist? What I mean by anti-racist? Anti-racist means I embrace the fact that yes, I understand that I'm different, but I'm not deficient. I understand that my brother's different, he's not deficient, but I take the time to engage in the culture of what it is that I may not have privilege to, that I may not have knowledge about. Because I understand that racism is a system, it's a structure. Racism is a system of beliefs, of policies, of legislation, of those who exclude and rather than include. And we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Am I a part of the structure that includes, or do I exclude? And here it is. You may not be doing it knowingly. Just may be a cool cat. You just may really be the type of person who I can just go and grab a beer with, just pull it apart, just be cool with it. But if you don't speak up, if you don't defend, if you don't engage, if you don't study, if you don't look at journalistic research and scholarly articles, if you don't have conversations with those who you work with who don't look like you. What is it your work say? Yeah, I've been working with Dexter for 12 years. Do you really know Dexter? I've been working with such and such for 12 years or 5 years. But have you really had any critical conversations with them? Other than, hey, how's it going? What's good, man? Hey, sis. Right? A refusal to remediate the system makes you an accomplice to the ongoing crimes against Black lives in America. We can't truly have Juneteenth activation without a call to action. I want to give you a few tips as I get ready to take my seat. And as you're listening, maybe you're saying, I hear you, but what can I do to further the cause? I'm so glad you asked. Number one, speak up for me. Maybe you're taking some notes today, but here's a game plan. Here's some tips, tools, and principles that we can all employ and apply. Number one, speak up for me. As I said before, you don't have to look like me to fight for me. All you have to do is fight with me. All you have to do is get in the fight with me. And I think our white brothers and sisters have to acknowledge the fact that you are privileged. You have to acknowledge it. You have privilege. And after acknowledging it, how do I use my privilege? Not for my own advancement, not for my own promotion, not for my own game plan, where I work myself up in the hierarchy of Lambert or whatever organization that I am in. But how do I create a bridge rather than building a wall so that there's inclusion in the boardroom and not just inclusion in the cubicle? That there's inclusion to where we bring Black men and Black women to the table and our Hispanic brothers and sisters, people who don't look like us, our Asian American brothers and sisters, our Indian, our Native American brothers and sisters, where we bring a diversity and collection of those whose voice is valuable. If I'm not at the table, then I'm on the menu. I know it's tight. They may not have it back. but if we're going to champion change, if we're going to champion change for a cause, we have to engage in what seems to be so uncomfortable. Right? It's uncomfortable to talk about violence. But poverty is the bride of crime, as Dr. King said. Wherever you see crime, there's poverty associated with it. When there's work that's got to be done on Mac and Dewick and on Linwood and on 7 Mile and Nichols versus just Birmingham and Beverly Hills and Southfield and Muskegon and Traverse City. Many of us will not even travel 9-mile radius outside of our own community. So we're not having those tough conversations. It's about being an anti-racist. Number 2, seek to understand. I told you, you got to speak up for me, number 1. Number 2, seek to understand. You got to discover and gain an understanding of the meanings behind privilege, meanings behind racism, meanings behind whiteness and systemic racism, right? Identifying racial inequities. Examining the historical roots, examining the concepts, examining the manifestations of racial privilege, prejudice, and discrimination. Number 3, stop saying I'm not racist. We're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have to have these tough conversations if we're going to have all of those aspects represented in an organization. What is the organism of the organization? What is it built on? Right? The jarring joke is that the Nile is a river in Egypt. Y'all gonna get that next week. You're gonna be driving down the street. You're gonna be driving up back and be like, oh, it just hit me. It just hit me. Right? You can't say I'm not racist just because I listen to hip hop music because your favorite rappers Jeezy, Weezy, and Jay-Z. Because you listen to Lil Uzi and you listen to T Grizzly and you listen to Cash Doll. It's about more than that. It is about you going beyond your own pride and removing the cultural cataracts, because it's one thing to ingratiate yourself in Black culture, but are you fighting for it? Are you fighting for it? Number 4, look within. Gotta look within. I want you to challenge yourself through self-reflection to ask, what are the cultural cataracts that I may have? When it comes to culture, when it comes to color, do I have any microaggressions? Am I triggered? What happens? Do I commit them? Do I acknowledge my own racial privileges? What messages did I receive when I was growing up? What messages did I receive when I was in school? What messages did I receive from my other friends who may not be as culturally sensitive as I am, but they say negative things when I come around because you see that person walking down the street? Yeah. Look at they sagging pants. And they flip the word sag. Y'all think about that. They say sagging backwards. Right? What are the things? Do I allow that to take place? Or do I speak up, even though I may now be the black sheep, even though I may now be the oddball? Because real friends, real people who have your back, have it when you're not in the front of them. Come on now. You got some friends that you want to defend you in rooms that you didn't step into. Come on. You got some real friends. You didn't make real friends anymore? Friends, how many of us have them? Y'all just right, like y'all don't know no rap. The ones we can depend on, let's be friends. Friends is not about color. Friends is about character. What is the character? You're going to have true friends, you got to show yourself friendly. Right? What is the racial makeup? Here it is of even my social circle of friends. I remember I was in school, in Ferndale High School, and I went there. I transferred from my all-black school, Benedictine. My grades weren't too good. I think 2 classes in school with Jimmy lunch. I love chasing girls in the gym and sit down and eat with them at lunch. And I had a lot of cultural cataracts. I had really was exposed to culture, and I had culture shock. One side was Japanese, a Japanese brother and sister. One side was my Asian American brother and sister. One side was Native American brother and sister. One side was white people. One side was black folks. I'm like, everybody is segmented, but who is coming together? And I made it an effort for me to ingratiate myself with a different hue of those who were beyond just my own color spectrum. What are you doing to step out of the line? What are you doing to step out of just your own social circle of friends to make yourself one who is culturally aware. Number 5, look outward. We have to ask more questions rather than make snap judgments. Y'all still with me on the screen? I don't know. Right? When our white brothers and sisters should be asking, why are unarmed black people being killed by those who are supposed to protect and serve? We talk about black on black crime, which is committed at 84% rate, but white on white crime is 92%. What does that say? We commit crimes, regardless of race, in your community. It's not just black folks are bad, they can't stop killing each other. No. Crime is community driven. Why is there a crime that is going on? If we're talking about black and white crime, that always gets a lot of publicity. What is taking place? Poverty, dilapidated communities. Resources not given to where our brothers and sisters cross 8 Mile and see them. What can we do as a result of that? Why are black people dying of diseases that can be preventable? Black people die, 70% of diseases that black people die from are preventable. Why is that taking place? We talk about COVID, we talk about cancer, we talk about comorbidities. Why does it affect us greater than it does any other population? What can I do to keep myself aware of it and then also help in the cause if I'm able to? Number 6, support black businesses. Here it is. Us as black people, we got to do a better job at that too. Black people only spend 1% of our resources on people who look like us. Right? We may complain about people of other race, but we spend our money with them. If we took that 1% and took it to 10%, we could create 1 million new jobs. I encourage you today, whether you're black, whether you're white, whatever Asian persuasion you may be, whatever Native American persuasion you may be, whoever you may be, I encourage you to support a black business today. And not just today, but keep on keeping on. 40% of black businesses went out of circulation, went out of business due to COVID-19. We have to engage in that. We have to focus on real estate. We have to focus on land. We have to focus on labor. We have to focus on resources. We have to address poverty. We have to address the wealth inequality gap as well. Last but not least, act with courage. Hear me. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and being courageous anyway. People say be fearless. That means, a lot of times people believe that means having no fear. No. The suffix is less. I fear less than most. And because I fear less than most, I'm going to act while I may be trembling. Your voice may shake, but still stand. Arms are sweaty, knees weak. Arms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. I know what Eminem said. Right? Feel the fear and do it anyway. The most courageous thing sometimes is just being able to speak up. Teaching your children about race. Teaching your children about what it means to be an anti-racist. Teaching your children about history that goes just beyond slavery. Us, especially even as black people, engage in the whole aspect of African-centered education, where we show our people that our history does not begin with slavery. We have to understand this, that we have to be on the move now. We are in a racial pandemic of what it is that we have been experiencing. We have to come together more than ever before. We have to have courageous conversations. We have to understand that provocateurs cannot stop us from protesting. The nightmare of negligence has to be over. For us to really realize the dream of a Martin Luther King, of a Malcolm, of a Dr. King, of a Rosa Parks, of a Coretta Scott King, of a Fannie Lou Hamer, who said, we didn't say we shall overcome, so that when we overcame, we forgot about those who still need to come over. There is still work that must be done. We must strengthen the unity in our community. The late Vance Havner said, snowflakes are fragile, but when they get together, they can shut down traffic. When snowflakes get together, they can shut down the city. Imagine what we can do when we come together. One can chase 1,000, two can chase 10,000. Imagine what all of us can do if we come together under the aspect of unity in our community, of embracing diversity, of working for equity, of looking to include those who may not look like us, but their voice still matters. Then we can rise together. I ask you to write me down in history, but you're bitter, twisted lies. You may try me in the very dirt, but still like dust I'll rise. We have to rise together. We have to understand that we're better together. We have to understand that our diversity is not adversity, it's strength. We're different, but we're not deficient. So in the words of a drum major for Justice Martin Luther King Jr., he said, we got to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, can join in the hands and sing the words of old Negro spiritual, free at last. Juneteenth, it cost us something to be free. It's going to cost us something to stay free. Come on, look at that person and say, are you willing to fight for me? Come on, ask. Are you willing to fight for me? Yeah. Well, beyond just words, now is the time for action. And there is no activation without us taking action. Thank you for your time today.